All right. Okay, everybody, we are live. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Thursday afternoon. We're in the middle of the week between the first game and the second game of the season. The Seahawks started out their 2021 campaign quite well, taking care of the Indianapolis Colts. And now we head into this home opener against the Titans. And I'm here to talk about the game with the Hawks Nest, Brendon, on YouTube, one of the best Seahawks YouTubers out there. How you doing today, Brendon?
I'm doing magnificently, my man. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. These guys, it's been a pretty decent week. It's been drama free. We're 1-0. Not a whole heck of a lot bad going on with this team at the moment. I follow a lot of Cowboys fans on YouTube, and all the problems they've been having this week have been. It makes you grateful sometimes that you don't have to deal with all the stuff they're dealing with: COVID, injuries, all this stuff, drug
It
suspensions.
it's the snake bitten team. It was the Niners was this sort of last year in the NFL, and it appears the Cowboys are going to take on this identity this season of the snake bitten team of the NFL, where it's just not really. It's like Matt Damon in Good Will Hunting, where Robin Williams is telling him it's not your fault. It's not their fault, but there's just a ton of stuff going wrong for them at the moment. Unfortunately, that it does look like it's going to sink them.
Yeah, speaking of the Niners, Dre Greenlaw going in for surgery tomorrow, out 2 months. And we already know they lost Jason Verrett and Raheem Mostert for the season. So you look at some of these other teams and you're like, glad I'm not them right now.
I mean, I'll tell you with the Niners, I always say we can't celebrate the losses because the karmic debt that it brings if you celebrate injuries. But at the same point in time, it is what it is. And the Niners losing two really important players. I'm not saying they're their stars, but this is a team that is a little bit like us, where they are top heavy. Frankly, most of the divisions and most of the teams, as good as they are in this division, are kind of top heavy. Where they're not, it's not stacked with a ton of depth. It's just a lot of good guys kind of on the front line. You're losing Mostert. They made a little low key trade of Wayne Gallman with the Giants that they had brought in this offseason. And then they traded him thinking that their stable was stacked with Mitchell and Trey Sermon and Mostert. Now it goes down to being on the light, but the Verrett one's super worrisome. I went on Niners channel earlier this offseason. I was shocked to hear them going to more of a man on man based scheme with their corners, less of the Seahawks like zone stuff that they were going to play anymore. Well,
Mm-hmm.
to do that, you need man on man corners. And they came into this season already losing two guys, and they were hoping Brett, who's never been healthy his whole career, was going to make it 16 games. He doesn't make it but one. I think that that's a huge blow to the 49ers, and I don't think it's one that is as easily overcomable past them making a trade for Stephon Gilmore as just going, let's just go get this guy in the market. Now you add Greenlaw, and it just gets further.
Absolutely. All right, so today we're going to mainly be previewing this Tennessee Titans game because that's chief in everybody's mind right now if you're a Seahawks fan. But first, that Colts game went pretty well. What are some of your main takeaways from that game? Because I liked what I saw from the Waldron offense for the most part. I like the fact that we got pressure on Carson Wentz. Those were some of my main takeaways. I think we held up well in coverage. So there was a lot positive to take away from that game for me. What are you taking away from that one?
Very similar to yourself. I saw you posted a video a little bit about what your expectations kind of were coming in are still the same. That this one game shouldn't change you on that, and though it
Mm-mm.
definitely worked good in the favor of what I had prognosticatedly hoped we would see, that doesn't mean that in itself means it's a harbinger of what we're going to see for the future rest of this season. There's no doubt about that. So it's a good step in the right direction, and it's fitting to what I call the new blueprint. I think we talked a little bit about this on my channel last week. It's just you're into a new blueprint. No longer are we going to scuttle through for three quarters, find ourselves in the fourth quarter, and rely on Russell Wilson magic more often than not. Now, you're going to be hopefully a little more consistent offensively throughout the course of the game. Does that mean a gazillion points? No. What it means is less 3-and-outs, less of those. You get the offense on the field and they accomplish nothing offensively, but basically losing yardage and a holding call. And that happens throughout the course of the game multiple times. It should be less of that. It should be more consistency with that approach now, which should eventually lead to more points. It should, but that's the thing I took away much above anything else is they fit to the blueprint. The defense stops the run, turns the offense one-dimensional, then they get after it, pin their ears back. Offensively, you remain balanced, take your shots when you have them, grind on the clock, grind out first downs. So it's the new blueprint to me to a winning model that we don't see here in Seattle very often. Brendon, how many comfortable wins have we had in 3 years? The last 3 years.
Yeah, and we used to get them all the time too. We used to blow out everybody back when this whole thing started in Seattle. It really got away from us lately. Things would just happen that would hold us back from being able to accomplish those big wins. And Sunday was relatively stress free. And that doesn't happen that often.
It was nice being in the fourth quarter, just kicking your feet back, kind of going, "Oh, I feel okay." You weren't,
Mhm.
you were still a little nervous. You knew something wild could still happen. It's the NFL, but you kind of sat there and I was in an unusual feeling. Usually I'm, like I said, worried about the heart attack and kind of getting stressed out and the palms are getting sweaty, but not on this one. I felt pretty comfortable and like, hey, I can do some more of these. I can handle going on and getting a few more of these games down the line.
Real quick, I want to say, Leland Kimball, thank you for becoming a channel
Oh,
member.
hey,
Appreciate it.
what's up, Leland? He's one of my boys on the side. So thanks, Leland. I
Mhm.
appreciate it too. You're awesome, brother.
Yeah, I think I've seen him on your channel before. So, one thing from that Colts game that I really liked was Wilson was still Wilson. He actually averaged 10 air yards per pass attempt in that game. For reference, he averaged about 9 over the last 3 seasons combined. So a lot of the Waldron stuff supposedly coming in was, oh, we're going to start throwing short passes. We're going to be throwing a lot of dump offs and check downs. We're going to go to that stuff. And while I like that stuff, I like that we're not taking away Wilson's greatest weapon. He is a great deep ball thrower. I like that we're not turning him into somebody that he's not. That was one thing that I really liked. Obviously, we had the 70-yard touchdown pass, which is going to skew stats. He had a couple other big plays as well, though. So that was something that I really wanted to see. We're integrating the Waldron offense with the stuff that used to work really well with Wilson. We're not just completely flipping over.
Well, because you were right on your point of last week being that you do have the first year troubles and the rough ride and the bumpy road of getting through that first year of the coordinator to learn an offense, especially if it happens to be what we've heard over and over, complex, detail driven. That's going to be an offense that takes a while to hit. And what we talked about is maybe the hope of overcoming some of those bumps, though, is having a Wilson who can give you the 69-yard bomb when you need it there, or just a magic play from time to time. The key is we're not asking him to make those magics all throughout the course of the game, and especially not at the end of the game constantly at this point. Hopefully, it may play out that way, but this is the hopeful move you make with this and what we can take advantage of right now in the production and how many points they can actually put up on the board. So I think offensively you got to take that as great as the pass rush was, and we got to talk about Brendon, some of these young pass rushers we got and how they looked. And granted, again, we put in perspective, the Colts came in with that offensive line as a walking wounded crew. No Fisher, no backup Sam Tevy, Quentin Nelson with the back spasms and the broken foot off the surgery, Ryan Kelly and the COVID protocols with his quarterback not 7 days before the start of the game. That's all acknowledged. But with that said, those would be my two big takeaways in this game. And I think the Waldron stuff is going to be real and it's going to work even early in this year. Would you, that'd be my one thing. I know we don't want to adjust on stuff. Would you feel maybe a little more hopeful at this point with Waldron having some more earlier returns, seeing that he can still keep some of that Russell stuff? It doesn't have to be all hard line to his lock and key.
Yeah, I think so. And I actually made a video about this yesterday, talking about how there are good examples of really good offensive coordinators and really good offensive coaches who needed a year to figure it out. But you can also find a recent really good example of an offensive coordinator who first year calling plays for a team just hit the ground running and dominated. It was Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore took over a team that was 22nd in the league in points and yards, and the very first year had them number 1 in yards and number 6 in points. Now, they had problems, and those problems manifested themselves in the form of they had bad games. They would have games where he would just lose track of what he was supposed to be doing, and they would have like 250 yards and 10 points against the Saints, or 300 yards and 9 points against the Eagles. But on the whole, that offense really produced. So it can happen. And this team has a lot of talent, and that talent can carry the day from time to time. Sometimes it's just a simple matter of our guys are more talented than their guys. And that may very well be the case this weekend, by the way, because this Titans defense seems a little low on talent to me.
You're correct on that. You're correct on that assumption. I watched the game on the Cardinals.
Yeah, not good. But this defense, this pass rush that you were talking about.
Yeah.
I was really, really surprised about some of it. Rasheem Green played over 50 snaps, more snaps than anybody else on that line, including Carlos Dunlap and Poona Ford, and he played a really good game.
Yeah.
Brian Monet, I kind of forgot about him, honestly, on this team. He was kind of a forgotten man for me, but somehow he's taken LJ Collier's role completely, it seems like. LJ Collier's not even active now. No. And I know that doesn't surprise you. It surprises me a little bit, but yeah, we
it's less about Collier at this point, I think, and sorry to interrupt you, but it's less about Collier, I think, and more about how good the talent is now, which is the one upshot of that. I think But keep going. You're on.
Yeah, but there was a lot of pressure from different people, and I'm going to make a video about this tomorrow, breaking down exactly who pressured when. But we got a couple from Taylor, we got some from Green, I think we got one from Puna, I think we got one from Monet. He actually had a play where I don't know how Carson Wentz got up after that one, but Dunlap had the sack on the 2-point conversion, which won't count, but we all saw it. We all know that it happened, even if the NFL pretends it doesn't. We all saw it.
It's such a ridiculous rule. It's so
yeah,
dumb.
I know. Yeah, I don't understand it either. Kerry Hyder. Yeah, there was a lot of good stuff, and it wasn't all just against who was the left tackle, the third string left tackle for the Colts, Davenport. Yeah, it wasn't all against him. It was against a lot of different people, and that has to be encouraging, especially going into a game like this week where you know that Taylor Lewan just had the worst game of his career. So, yeah, I was impressed.
I think it was, did it remind you a little of shades of Legion of Boom era pass rush, in that it seemed like everyone sort of takes their turn at a given point? It's not one guy dominating play after play, his man across the board. It's Michael Bennett, and then, oh, here comes Cliff Averill, and oh, Chris Clemens is coming in with the pressure now, and oh, hey, Bruce Irvin's in here now, and you're going, wow, everybody's sort of like they've taken a ticket at Costco, right? Where you got to take a ticket and hold in when you got the optics or whatever, and then they go, okay, here's your ticket. They all kind of do it right in line. It felt like that a little bit to me. Wentz got hit more times. He had been only hit one more time last year with the Eagles than he was hit in this game, to put it in perspective for you on that. And that's an Eagles line last year that was supposed to be completely putrid, just allowing everybody to run into the backfield on Carson Wentz time and time again. So that's, to me, is a little bit indicative of how good that performance was from us. I think it's going to be something that we can replicate again going forward. I don't know if it's be as kind of sub-dominant as it was at times in this game a little bit, but look, that's what they tried to do this offseason. This is what's given me so much confidence in this defense this year, first the last 4 or 5 years. For the first time in a half decade, you didn't short sell the pass rush. You didn't say, let's just try to do just good enough. Benson Mayo and Bruce Irvin. We're done. We lost Clowney. We'll throw those two guys out. We'll get Darrell Taylor. He'll figure his way in there too. No, you've hammered it over the last couple of years from Carlos Dunlap and Jamal Adams, and the way they've assembled all these pass rushers, like you've talked about, all the investment into that defensive line with draft picks as far as that's gone. You're getting a little bit of now to start to see some of that bloom at just the right time, which is great to see. But it's it's a good problem to have as well. We got to get Alton Robinson snaps, and that's I don't know about you on your chat. They're talking to me. Listen, you got to get on the field. Well, who are you two snaps you taking? Benson Mayo got a sack, had pressures. You bring my Rasheem Green to me, earned those snaps. He's earned this role at this point. He was constant throughout. He didn't just flash like he has in the previous games here and there, but throughout the whole game, you saw him consistent. So I think they're going to do really well too. To me, looks like Lewan right now is not over that ACL yet. I'm watching that game. He was out there with he's a clean technique guy. He's not a guy that ever relied really on athleticism or speed, but coming off the torn ACL now, he's really struggling to move. You see him, and everything looks perfect, right? His set's perfect. He sinks down, his hands get, he never is caught off balance. He can't get to a spot, and Chandler Jones was beating him to a spot off the line of scrimmage. To me, that speaks to the torn ACL and not being fully back from it yet. That's just the way it kind of looked to me. So I look at that one. That's going to be he's going to have a hard matchup, whoever you draw over there. If it's Rasheem Green, who it looks like they're going to try to do a little more Darrell Taylor to the left side, by the way. Did you see the Seahawks behind the scenes on that? Him talking about that?
Yeah, I saw a little bit of that. It's definitely really cool. I like the fact that we're making it a little easier for Taylor this first year, because I don't know if he played any coverage against the Colts. If he did not play very much. But for the most part, when he got on the field, it was just go get the quarterback.
Yeah. Which is that's the role I want to slot him into. I think he'll be at his best if you can do that. It was interesting though, the Seahawks behind the scenes saying, him on the sideline talking to his teammates, said, I'm at my best on the left side. And that's weird, because really ideally you'd like to put him to the Leo with his build and his frame and his get off. That's the Leo spot. You want the Dunlap top over on the other side, which is the strong side of the offensive formation more often than not. But maybe he's just going to be kind of a freak over there if you put him over there too. So I don't know. That's, again, good problem to have here.
And teams are finding creative ways around stuff like that as well. I think you're seeing some teams basically put 2 Leos out there in passing situations. Yeah. And it makes sense why that would be a solution to that. If you know the other team's going to pass, then why not put 2 Leos out there?
Yeah.
And,
what the Niners did.
Yeah, and the Alton Robinson thing, he played 12 snaps on Sunday, and I think he had 3 run stops and 1, maybe 2 pressures. So he used his snaps extremely well. So
he's a monster too.
Yeah,
he looked awesome. He was so sudden off the snap, physical, used his hands, all the vintage stuff.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think those are the main takeaways from that Colts game. And I mentioned some stuff earlier today when I was looking at it, like Jordan Brooks really held up in coverage despite getting picked on. They went into that game, I think, with a game plan to make Jordan Brooks prove he knows how to cover. And by my stats, he got targeted 11 times by Carson Wentz and only allowed 54 yards on those 11 targets, which is really workable.
I think he looked really good. The one thing I'd ask you about is the one play that stood out to me, because Quandre Diggs got hit on this with the PFF stuff. The first touchdown down when the Colts are driving down. And it's a zone where there's three receivers stacked to the side. Diggs has got over the top coverage basically as he's just sit there to clean anything up going over the top. Basically, the receiver ends up to the middle of the field in. And I don't think Brooks got nailed on that play for having that failure. And then it got hit on Diggs, whose coverage grade went way down because of that in this game, because of giving up that touchdown theoretically. But I felt like it was a little bit more in watching the tape. I watched it like 10 times. It seemed a little more on Brooks there. With that said, he was way better in coverage this game than he's been in any other game that he's played up until this point. And he had the play down the field against the tight end where he was right there, step for step with him. He a little bit close to putting a hand in his face and getting called for OPI on it, but perfect timing, gets the hand across at just the right time. Great coverage on his part. He took a step forward. No doubt about it.
Yeah. I do think he got a little too deep on that touchdown. The Brooks did. I think he dropped back a little too far. And it's not like he was known for his coverage ability in college. So I'm going to expect things like that to happen every now and then. But other than that play, he really did a great job of keeping everything in front of him. He allowed 8 completions, which sounds really bad, but not when it's only going for 54 yards. I can live with that. That's less than 5 yards a target.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Do you move, for the folks that they're clamoring for Alton Robinson to take over, let's say, Mayowa's snaps at this point? Do you do that move at this point based off of this game?
Well, that's kind of interesting. I feel like these things should happen organically. I feel like these things should not be forced. You shouldn't have to force anything. It's like forcing the ball to DK Metcalf. You shouldn't have to force that. That's going to happen organically if everybody's allowed to play. You're going to find out who your best guys are. You're going to find out who's able to play 45 to 50 snaps a game and who wears down by the end of the game if that continues on. Like Rasheem Green, like I said, played about 53 snaps on Sunday. I don't think he should be playing 53 snaps in every game. That's probably going to wear him down by the end of the year. So you can give Alton Robinson some of those snaps. You can move Kerry Hyder or Rasheem Green to defensive tackle on pass snaps too. There's a lot of flexibility you can utilize here with some of these players. So it's a good problem to have. I'm not worried about it. And I feel like that'll just take care of itself eventually.
Agreed. I'm in the same boat. Just let it sort of ride out at this point. Don't make any major changes. And it's a problem that a lot of teams in the league would love to have.
Yeah. And somebody's probably going to get hurt. This is a violent game. Somebody eventually is going to get hurt, and you're going to be happy you have that problem.
Yeah. Especially with the 17th game season or extra game this year, basically.
All right. So I think that's pretty much the Colts game. Let's turn our focus to the Tennessee Titans this week. They're coming in. First home game that means something in front of the 12s in over a year. Yeah. In over a year and a half. What do you think about these Titans other than the fact that they played a really bad game against the Cardinals in week 1?
Well, there's one stat first and foremost before we dive into what is going on with them personnel-wise that's going to kind of freak you out a little bit and freak me out about when I saw it. You got a 4 or 5 year tenure there with Mike Vrabel in Tennessee. And in that time period, he's had double-digit losses 7 times. The next game after all those 7 games, they've won 7-0. So that's a pretty startling stat. Already before that, I had thought you were going to get a team that was like, I've reckoned them to a little bit of like a feral animal trapped in the corner that's got rabies and it's frothing at the mouth. And you got to go over there and pick it up and throw it outside. And you're going to get bit here. There's no way this is going to, a lot of my people in the chat last night riding high were, hey, we're going to just smoke show them. It's going to be 42-10. And I think this is going to be a close game. You're going to get their best punch. You're going to get playoff level intensity. You're going to get a guy and a head coach who chews glass and spits fire, who's going to be coming in there and he's going to have them bringing it, challenging their manhood all week long. So with that understanding, to me, you're not going to get just, well, they're a team, not enough talent. Yeah, there's a little of that there, but you're going to get a hungry team, a proud team. I think you have to match that if you're the Seahawks, and hopefully the 12s can give them that energy, but they've got to match that energy, especially early on, because we got to take away the run game. Let's face it, that's the key here, is taking away Derrick Henry.
Right. And somebody in my chat actually brought this up a couple days ago where I know they were getting blown out, but Derrick Henry only had like 10 yards at halftime in that Cardinals game. He was not getting the ball. And he was talking about how I'll bet that this week, the offensive coordinator, I don't know who they got after they lost their guy to Atlanta. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he probably had it in his ear all week from the media and the other coaches and just the people around him that like, hey, you got to get Derrick Henry the ball more. So don't be surprised if there's an overreaction to that. And they come out in that game this week feeding Derrick Henry because it's kind of like the pendulum swings the other way. Oh, I didn't give Derrick Henry the ball enough last week. I'm going to give it to him too much this week. So you can probably very reasonably assume that Derrick Henry is going to get the ball a lot just because of that. But I don't dread that. I know that Derrick Henry is good, but the thing in this game that I think will actually decide the game, especially if it's close at the end, is Julio Jones and AJ Brown in that passing attack.
Mm-hmm. I agree as well. It's a little bit harder than this is one of those spots where if you're an offensive coordinator, life is rough on you as an offensive coordinator in the NFL, because in watching that game, it wasn't a matter of he wasn't trying to establish the run. They got down by 2 touchdowns really early and then beyond that really quick, like into the end of the first quarter. They tried to run early downs with their guy and Derrick Henry in that first half. The problem was every single time the Cardinals were getting penetration and getting a TFL. If it wasn't Bosa, it was Watt. It wasn't Watt, then it was Bosa. And there was just no room there for Henry to run through. And then your team gets down by those touchdowns. No team can run the ball once they get down like that. You got to start kind of throwing. Maybe they could have run a little bit more, but they were having no success at all. And that penetration was every single play. Seattle on the other side of that's not going to do the same thing, of course, though, because we're not that downhill defense like Arizona is in our style. We're more hold the line, read and react, control your gap, especially on the defensive line. So we've got to create a wall of guys rather than the penetration they created to have the same kind of success against him. Though I will say, to your point, we absolutely can do that. You took a guy in Jonathan Taylor who last year averaged 5 yards per carry, one of the great new upcoming backs. He's going to join the Dalvin Cooks, the Nick Chubbs, the Kamara types, the McCaffrey types, right? He'll be right there with them here probably pretty soon. You shut him down to 3.3 yards per carry on 17 carries. You did your job with that. So that shows me this is a team that can be built to stop the run. Monet, Al Woods, 2 big bodies down there, but they're going to have to maintain. If you want to watch something to watch in this game, if you're a fan, watch the gap control by the defensive line. Is the guy, not only is he not getting pushed back, is he not getting pushed side to side? Is he controlling his lane? Because one guy gets pushed out of his lane, that's all it takes for a guy like Henry. But if every guy, this is one of those Belichick's do your job moments, do your job, hold your gap, maintain your gap control. And if we can do that, then we can stop him, I think.
Right, and the Titans' offensive line is not what it used to be. They used to have a lot of killers, and right now they don't. And Taylor Lewan might have entered a different phase of his career at this point. It's possible.
Some guys don't come back from this ACL. We always think they all come back. Sometimes they don't.
Yeah, definitely. So this Titans passing attack obviously was hampered significantly against Arizona because they couldn't protect Ryan Tannehill. That was clearly what was going on in that game. But we know they have talent out there. We know they might have the most talented 1-2 punch at receiver in the league. And I see a lot of people who are really worried about the matchup of our corners versus their receivers, but the Cardinals cornerbacks are not that good either. They lost Malcolm Butler out of nowhere right before the season started. They were caught with their pants down there. They lost Patrick Peterson and they lost Malcolm Butler. So that I think looking at a game like what they did against Arizona, I know Tennessee's not going to play a game that bad for the whole rest of this season. Probably that was probably the worst effort they can put out there, but that should tell you that you can stop this offense without having amazing corners. You don't need the Legion of Boom back to stop these guys. You just need to get to Tannehill. So I'm expecting that. I mean, is that kind of what you're thinking?
It is. They were able to generate, the front four was able to generate pressure for the Cardinals. They usually like to be blitz heavy. They got into real soft zones, which is what we're going to run a lot of ourselves. I think we ran basically front 4 pressures the majority of the time in this last game. We barely blitzed. Adams had like 4 blitzes the whole game. So you're going to stay into that soft zone, and that's what's going to help those corners, right? Is they get the over. It's a lot more now. We're doing a little more cover 2 type stuff. So you're going to see them with the cover 2 where you have a safety always helping each corner on either side, and not one safety like you have in the single high safety where you like the Earl Thomas type who would be back there alone in center field like Griffey Jr., and his job is to take care of everything back there. You have less of that now, more of now with the cover two and them starting to implement this more, them helping those corners out. So I agree with you. We have got stuff. We've got the build here to be able to at least, let's just say this, keep the chunk plays under control. Maybe they catch us underneath and a little bit on the post routes from time to time, but everything deep should be cleaned up with that help, with that in a lack of need to have to necessarily blitz.
Right. Yeah, there were definitely some plays. I'm in my Discord server with a bunch of other Seahawks fans. We're watching the game together. There was definitely some degree of panic setting in for some of the fans because they saw this Colts team march down the field on us 5, 6, 7 yards at a time, especially on the first drive of the game and that last drive of the game that ended in the fourth down stop. Where they're just like, oh wow, our defense is terrible, we can't stop them, we can't get off the field. Some of that's just by design, and you do have to live with that. And at the end of the day, you allowed 10 points and then 6 points in garbage time. The end result is not nearly as bad as watching every single play sometimes makes it look. So you have to live with that.
I'm glad you mentioned this as a point. I am. This is because this was a little thing I was getting sometimes even after the game in the post game chat where people are just lamenting the defensive play. And I go, 16 points, constant pressure throughout. You shut down their running game. Oh, the corners. We need to go make a trade for. You guys, this is a great defensive performance. This is on the road, 10 a.m. against an offense that was in the playoffs, last year. I understand that they're a little walking wounded, but that's a good defensive performance out the gate. And I'm with you on the first drive. We always got to remember the first drive. Those plays are scripted. So throughout the week, those offenses work through the first 15 plays, and they do nothing but work on those first 15 plays for like 2 of the days of practice and all the way through the week. So when they come in, they've got that stuff refined at a level they're not going to have refined when they get into the playbook, and now they're just freelancing it. So if you see a team drive up with us in the early part, you don't have to get super worried about it, in my opinion, because look, that's their best shot offensively. This is as good as they're going to have really at the end of the day. And Holmgren was like renowned for this. Your first drive come out and you look like we're going to be unstoppable today, and then you get through those 15 plays and it was kind of like you're feeling yourself for a little while on how to get to the other side of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that thing you're talking about really goes quadruple for Trey Brown. I'm sorry, not Trey Brown, Trey Flowers, because I have gotten probably about a dozen stream comments or video comments in the last 4 days of people saying we need to cut Trey Flowers because he's so bad. And I'm looking at it. PFR released their coverage stats yesterday, I think. Trey Flowers got targeted 3 times in over, I think, 40 coverage snaps. Yeah, he gave up 3 completions, but 28 yards. And the touchdown he gave up, I'm sorry, that was a 7-man blitz where he was basically left
man on man.
Yeah. What are you going to do? Most people would give up a touchdown in that situation.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be sending 7-man blitzes in that situation, I don't think. I don't understand that. Yeah. But yeah, 3 targets in 40 or so coverage snaps. I don't know what people are seeing the need to cut after looking at a performance like that.
100% agree with you. And I've been fighting the same fight on my side with my chat saying, you guys, this isn't a horrible performance. He may provide that performance down the road to confirm what you guys have built in as far as some of the, I'm not going to say it's hate for Flowers, but there's certainly sometimes some stuff that versioning is just very close to hate. I never understood how sometimes Shaquille Griffin got the hall pass and Trey Flowers never did. And you look at Trey Flowers this week, or Shaquille Griffin for this week, a lot of those same fans, they're talking about wanting to cut Trey Flowers, talk about how we should have signed Shaquille Griffin this offseason. You'll look at Shaquille Griffin's PFF score versus Trey Flowers in this game, pretty much equivalent. And we're not paying $14.5 million a year for it. It's in roster building. You can't make everything a strength with the salary cap era. You got to choose to go a little cheap where you can find it. And this is a spot we go cheap out of the corner because they play zone. You mentioned the touchdown. Another great point. Don't run zero blitz down at the goal line and put a guy in Trey Flowers who's a zone-based corner, because this is one of my sticking points. I hate this. There are man-on-man corners. There's zone corners. They don't often do both skills really well. You get one guy that does really this or one guy that does really that. So you put Trey Flowers in a man-on-man situation, he's going to get smoked like that time and time again. Keep him in zone, he'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I feel. And I understand that Trey Flowers did not play great last year, but I just don't understand how you can look at the performance on Sunday and go, okay, yeah, this is the last straw. Trey Flowers needs to go.
Yeah, get the guillotine out. I was getting the same thing, and I don't understand it quite. It may come, and this week will be a big test. Although I'll say this week, this is a good matchup for him, giving him a bigger receiver to go against versus the smaller T.Y. Hilton types, the
Yeah.
jitterbug types. That's going to
Mhm.
be the ones that give him hellacious problems. You give him the bigger type guys, we'll see, he should hold up a little bit better against those guys because he's got the height and size to kind of match with them overall.
Right. A couple of things that I saw from Twitter in the last day or so that I think are interesting and kind of go to what you were just talking about. In the first half of the Colts game, the Seahawks had 31 defensive plays and they ran rush 4, cover 3 on just 2 of those plays. So we are seeing some things start to change, which is really, I think, a good thing because you want to mix it up.
It gives you that reason alone. You're not one thing. Just cover 3, cover 3, cover 3. Yeah.
Yes. And also, according to Corbin Smith on Twitter, we sent 5 or more rushers on 11 plays out of, I think, 76 or something. There was some zone blitzing because we all saw Rasheem Green dropping back into coverage once or twice, which is, don't do that. But not very many blitzes. A few zone blitzes, but in terms of sending 5 or more rushers, only 11 times. So we got pressure without sending the house. So don't send the house. It's unnecessary.
Unnecessary. You've got the front 4 that can get it done. Their pass rush win rate will be really good. Trust in them. Let them take their turn. Like I was talking about, it's your ticket. You're number 1, you're number 2, number 3. You're on the third play. You'll get the pass rush. You got the first play. You're going to get pass rush. Let's see if they can ride with that. That worked in the Legion of Boom era. You were one of the least blitz. I mean, you were like 31 or 32 in the league in blitzing during the Legion of Boom era when the defense was running optimally. So to fall back in that is great. And that five-man blitz you talked about, one guy who's knocked that over and over is Chris Sims out there when he's talking about the Seahawks. He calls it the 5-man blitz that gets nothing done. You send 5, but you don't generate pressure. You just essentially go 5 against 5, and they man you up, and nobody beats their guy because theoretically you're getting single blocking for a guy by driving the 5th guy, right? Because you have an offensive line with 5 guys so they can double somebody on a 4-man front. You send 5, somebody's getting single teamed, hopefully, and they can hunt at that point. But we just hadn't had good enough rushers up to this point to really do that. But I agree. It's an extra guy you take out of coverage now when you bring that 5th guy. Leave that one extra linebacker in space, close those zones.
Right. Real quick, Go Hawks 2021. Thank you for the $9.99. It's a shame they never put Penny on IR. Will Hawks use Collins or D as second running back? By D, I don't know if you mean Dwayne Eskridge, but I'm sure Collins is going to be the second running back going forward. He's clearly the guy with the most all-around ability, and he's somebody who can catch passes. He's somebody who can block. He's somebody who can run the ball. He's somebody who can run the outside zone stuff. He can do it all. He's not situational. Nope. So, yeah, I'm sure Collins will be the second running back going forward.
They're already, we knew the battle was close coming out of camp, and look, Penny just can't stay healthy. Availability is the best thing you need to have, and he hasn't had it, and it's mounted to the point, and I've been a big Penny backer, but it mounts to a point where you got to go, okay, dude, like it's just not coming together for you. I don't want to cut him or IR him, frankly, because I want to keep the running back stable deep. I'm more in favor of that. The running back and the receiver room are 2 parts of our team recently that have gotten, I'm going to say, just kind of decimated over recent years, where you've had to get to the point of not receiver room, but at least running back room going on the street. I do not want DeJuan Harris playing for us at running back in a playoff game when the games matter, like in 2015 when that happened. I don't want to have that go down that road again. So let's keep the running back room as deep as we can. We're already paying Penny. It's already on, you're on the hook for it. So let's roll with all of them. But I'm okay with Alex. I like Alex. He showed a lot in preseason. I think he can be productive for us. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah. All right. So we talked about the Titans offense a lot. They didn't play well against the Cardinals, but we know they're good. We know they have talent. We know they can do things. Maybe some of the holes that they have are going to limit them, but we know they have talent. Let's talk about their defense a little bit, because that defense, they might just be bad because they were bad last year and they might continue to be bad. So what do you think of those guys after one game?
2019, you went to the playoffs when you were the Titans at 9-7. You had names of guys like Adoree Jackson, Logan Ryan, Malcolm Butler, Jarrell Casey on the defensive side of the ball. All those guys have moved on, and you've not added to anything on top of those guys since they've left. That's really where I think their defense stands. They've not had the development or the drafting that they've wanted to have to make it work. Certainly, Harold Landry and their defensive tackle they have, whose name's escaping me at the moment, are their two biggest and only threats that they have on the defensive line. They signed Bud Dupree, but to me, this is where this game comes down to. If the Titans are going to win this game, two players have to play good for them on both sides of the ball who didn't play good this last week. We talked about Luan already. That's obvious, right? Left tackle, blindside protector. But when you look at the other guy, I see it as Bud Dupree, their big free agent signing this offseason. I'm not a big Bud Dupree guy. That was not a good signing on their part. It was made out of desperation because the Clowney move didn't work, and the guy that they signed from the Falcons didn't work last year, so they were scuffling, trying to figure it out. He's a guy that always relied on TJ Watt to come in and generate the initial pressure, and then the quarterback steps up in the pocket, he cleans it up. I call him the Jaron Reed of outside 3-4 linebackers, if you want to think, just kind of contextualize it a little bit. So he played last week. He did not, like Luan, look like he's back from his torn ACL suffered last year. He's got a little bit of the Roadrunner thing where it's like trying to come to a stop, it's like, and he can't come to a stop. And Kyler Murray was just, he'd be chasing Kyler. I got you, and stop. And it was like Ahmad Brooks with the Niners back in the Legion of Boom area, who made him miss twice on a one play. Russell Wilson did same thing. Like he made a miss and they went all the way back to the other side of the field. Bud Dupree's chased him to the other side of the field, comes to a stop. Dupree overruns him like 7 yards, and it's not a good look. And if he can't give him, and they only have those two guys to supply any kind of pass rush, because that's it for the Titans, they don't have enough on the back end, and that's where you really can hit him. Christian Fulton's still coming along as a second rounder last year. The Elijah Molden kid out of University of Washington, a slot guy for them, he got abused in this last game. Janoris Jenkins looks like he's got a fork coming out of his back on the other cornerback side of things. They do have Kenyon Bayard. He's a playmaker. He's a ball hawk. He can pick some balls off for you in the safety as far as that goes. But that's, again, not a lot back there. He is about it right now as it stands for them.
Right. And by the way, I think he will probably play, and this probably just relates to his ACL, but Bud Dupree did not practice yesterday and is considered questionable to even play. And actually, so is Harold Landry. Those are their two starting outside linebackers. And wow. Like you said, they have a lot of problems on that defense. And I feel like the Mike Vrabel scheme in general just hasn't meshed really well with those guys. It seems to me that for a defensive guy, his defenses are never as good as you would expect.
You'd also expect it. He comes from the Carroll tree. He comes from the Belichick tree, where you would expect more inventiveness and imagination. I mean, you look at a guy like Flores with Miami, who also comes off that tree, and how crazy that defense is with Miami. I mean, you don't know what you're getting from play on play. Whereas with Vrabel stuff, they seem to be in so much more, a lot of the times, kind of in just some simple base stuff. They don't seem to be really exotic off what I was talking with the Cardinals. Maybe some of that was you're trying to contain Kyler Murray, and so you just didn't feel like you could really unleash it. But I never feel like I'm seeing a lot of exotic stuff with his defenses, to your point.
Right. And I'll say this is more about the game in general, but it also has to do with that defense. Usually when I'm going into a Seahawks game these days, I feel like we have a disadvantage in terms of in-game coaching against almost everyone. And that's one thing that always scares me. Somebody is going to do something to outcoach Pete Carroll, and that can decide the game, because I don't think Carroll's good in-game. And in fairness, most coaches aren't.
No.
But I feel like Carroll is at a disadvantage against a lot of guys in terms of in-game decision-making. But against Vrabel, I don't know. I think Vrabel is maybe kind of that same school of being old school and hard-nosed, and that's great for some stuff. But I don't know if I'm scared of Carroll getting out-coached in this game. I'll say that.
I'm not either. And I think to your point on that a little bit, it's mainly I would point to as much the offensive side, that he has that most glaring hole, because he always inserts himself to the offensive side of the ball for that strategy. I'm not necessarily calling plays, but what he's choosing to have the offense do. And I think that's the part where he has to remove himself from, because I think a guy like Waldron might be good against it. He might be good as an adjuster on that side. If he keeps, I say, Carroll, keep your fingers out of that pie. Don't put your fingers like you always do in that pie. Stay out of it. Don't cause the situation like last year in the playoff with the Rams, where you had the 4th and 1 call and you get the delay of game call because, Carroll's arguing with Schottenheimer at the time about the play call. That's the type of thing you get with Carroll, and he messes stuff up on that thing. I do think he's not at his best as well necessarily on the defensive side of the ball as well, but I think they're good enough. He's a good enough defensive guy and defensive mind. He can do at least slight adjustments to where it's really hard to beat his defense from end to end, or him to never have any answers if something's going a little bit wrong defensively. He usually can, if he's got the personnel. I mean, last year there was times where that was the case on the first 8 games, but if he's got the personnel, he can usually get it done.
Right, right. Real quick here. Jonathan De La Cruz, thank you for the $5. Going to the game on Sunday. All right, very cool. Have fun. Who's your key player for the game that needs to have a good performance to get a win? I mean, there's a really easy answer to this question every time it gets asked, but I don't know if that's what you're looking for. The right answer is always Russell Wilson because he's the quarterback, and for pretty much every team, it's going to be the quarterback. I assume you're not really looking for that, though, because Wilson usually plays a good game. So if you're talking about this game in terms of maybe something a little more interesting than just Wilson, then maybe I would go with somebody like Bobby Wagner or DJ Reed, who did not play stellar against the Colts, I don't think. So maybe that.
Yeah, DJ Reed should have gotten a lot of the heat that Trey Flowers was getting out of this last game. I definitely would give you that. I agree. Yeah, I'm with you on the Wilson would be my choice with it as well. I'll give you some outside the box ones for us just on both sides of the ball. Let's go with Fuller at center. He's going up against this kid that they got out of, I think, Texas and A&M, this defensive tackle they got. He is a monster. I mean, he's a big dude. He's come along. Jeffrey Simmons, and he was a guy who should have been a first round pick, but he tore his ACL in college at the end of the year. Would have been a first round pick otherwise. He's really come along for them as a player. I like him a lot, and he's going to be matched up at times with Fuller, and Fuller's got to handle business in there with him because you'll get single blocks, especially when they bring those blitz. What they'll do is they'll bring the blitzes. This is what happened to Posick last week, right? When DeBuckner just shoe shine, just basically slapped him upside his head, right? Like they got a blitz up, so now you got the center with DeBuckner. You're one-on-one. We got to get the blitzer on the guard, so you're stuck. You got to handle this. So when those moments and you get that big boy on, you got to hold it down, Fuller, and not let that pressure just get pushed right into Russell's face. On the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to go with pass rush again because that, like I said, I think Luan and Dupree are the two guys on the Tennessee side. So with that, Luan, the blindside guy who's coming, and it won't, maybe it's Taylor a little bit, maybe it's a little Rasheem Green, but let's go Rasheem Green because I think he's going to be lined up more in the Leo position in this game with Dunlap on the other side, and then they'll mix Taylor in between the two of them. But we'll go with can Rasheem Green follow up that performance? We saw that, I mean, best performance of his career in 4 years here, right there. Did you know, by the way, he's actually younger than D. Eskridge?
I actually did know that. I think he was 20 his rookie year, which is like something that happens in basketball. You almost never see that in football. That sounds like Andrew Bynum, his rookie year was 17 because of the way things used to work back then.
Yeah.
You don't see that in the NFL almost ever. So
no, it's incredible, man.
Yeah. I will confess that last year I kind of gave up on Green. I thought last year was going to be the breakout year, and it just wasn't going to happen. Yeah. But maybe I jumped off the ship a year too early. Maybe this is the breakout year. It's possible.
I think he could be out of it. Look, it's no coincidence this has happened in a contract year. I think you were right to probably jump a little bit off the train last year, as it's 3 years in at that point. You've had 3 years of development in an NFL program, and you basically don't look like it's the light bulb's coming on. So it's rare a guy in the fourth year finally has something happen where he goes. But pass rushers do take a while to develop most of the time and really refine themselves out. And what I saw this last Sunday was a refined performance. That inside move on the sack, where he starts out, gets the guy oversetting, and then rips it, goes right across his face. The lineman barely got his hands on him on an inside move. I thought that was so impressive from that. It's hard to do, man. The lineman's easily going to have his hands on him. You're going across his face. So his hands are in, but he was so quick on it, caught the tackle so off guard with it, and then used his hands nicely to keep the tackle from repositioning himself, kept himself walled off between him and the quarterback to get the sack. Just a great performance by Rasheem. I was so impressed by him on Sunday.
Right, and he's going to get his turn against Luan, but I expect Dunlap and Robinson and Taylor to as well. And you're right. Those guys abusing Taylor Luan is a big deal, and if they can't, then that's a huge crippling factor because that's where most of the pressure can come from. And I think that if we don't get pressure, then it's pretty obvious what is going to happen. Those two receivers would burn anybody. They're certainly going to burn our corners. 100%. And and I don't know what you do with a guy like a DJ Reed in this game because he's got like half a foot, or the other guys have like half a foot on him. That's a problem.
Yeah.
So
blessed in Austin, maybe just for a game. Let's take Blessed in Austin out there.
Yeah, Sidney Jones is like 6 feet, I think, so that's not bad.
I think he's fighting with a groin. He was on the injury report with a groin thing.
Is he on injured reserve, or is he just like
no? Just on the injury report. I'm just on the report. So it's not so super probably that it's probably just twingy, but they want to rest it usually when they get the twingy groins. And don't we all?
All right. So my viewers, I don't know about your viewers, but my viewers, they like score predictions, which I don't. that much because it seems arbitrary. Like
Yeah.
that game against the Colts, that was a 28-10 game, and then the Colts scored a touchdown with 2 minutes left. Who cares? It doesn't tell you how the game went. It's like if you ask somebody, hey, what did you think of this movie? And they just say, I give it a 7 out of 10. That doesn't tell you anything.
Agreed.
So I kind of feel the same way about score predictions. But this game, Titans, if I was going to go ahead and try to offer one up, I'd say something like Seahawks 31, Titans 21, something like that.
Okay.
What do you got for us?
Well, like last week, we were right on the same one last week. I think I'm pretty close to you. I'm 27-21 Seahawks in this game. So I think the Titans do get a little bit on the ground done with Henry, not 100 yards, because Seattle's going to concentrate on it. And I do think Tannehill is who's a fairly good quarterback. I don't think he's awesome, but he's a good quarterback, and he's good. He also has some pretty good mobility coming out of this game. So I put 27-21, I'd say. I think Seattle get enough done offensively. That secondary is not going to slow us down. They do a good job stopping the run. I will say that throughout the game against the Cardinals through 3 quarters, even though they were getting just blitzkrieged on the back end, they were still holding up really well in the running game against the Cardinals. And maybe that's just the Cardinals can't run block. And let's face it, James Conner's not getting anybody excited, right? Chase Edmonds is like, okay. But it was what it was. At least what they put on tape is a team that can stop the run. So we're probably going to have to get the job done in the air. And I've got to tell you just one story of this card game. Cardinals are scary, man. Watching this game, they're freaky. They're one play that scares me for Russell's future is you've got a play where J.J. Watt starts up on the inside in the 3-tech, and then Chandler Jones is on his outside shoulder as the blindside rusher. They run a stunt play, but what they do first is they have J.J. Watt literally hit this guy upside his face. Like he smacks the guard in the face. The guard goes, oh my God. Chandler then comes in and hits the guard upside the other side of his head, right? So it's like a double wonk. You can see him just dazed. Watt then clears around on the stunt going back around him. Literally, Chandler Jones could walk to the quarterback and sack him at that point. The guard is so messed up at this point. Like it's like head spinning, seeing stars. That's going to be a problem trying to block that with like just those guys and them running games as they get better at that. And if they can stay healthy, I'm much more fearful of the Cardinals after this game than I was coming into this year.
Well, it sounds like a couple penalties might have happened on that play to me based off how you describe it.
It was on, I mean, I'm probably saying head, but it was like the way they're knocking him back essentially. It's more the force that they knock him back with that he's just not expecting. Like Watt, he's thinking Watt's maybe going to do a little bit of I'm going to this way, that. No, I'm just going to come at you. But then he gets the other guy hitting him. It's a 1-2 punch. And the way they time that up, that would be the timing you'd see with pass rushers who had normally played together for 3 or 4 years in the way they were running that stunt. And then it's these two guys that are elite pass rushers at that getting it done. And what they did to the Titans line, both of them, Watt looked good as well. It wasn't just Chandler Jones. They both looked good. Dangerous.
And I have to admit, I didn't think Chandler Jones was going to be much of anything anymore. After he tore that ACL, I thought that was kind of it. I thought he was holding out in large part because he kind of knew that he was probably toast and needed to get that last paycheck before everybody found out. But maybe not. Maybe he's actually going to have his best year ever, and he's had incredible years before. Now, the good news is J.J. Watt might be on IR before we play Arizona this year, so at least there's that. We all know how that goes with him. He gets hurt a lot. But, yeah, maybe that team, at least for now, is a little better than I was giving them credit for.
Yeah, and they're more just dangerous. It was just a little thing to notice, but I think Chandler's back to his form, and I'm with you. I thought this was going to be maybe the year he starts to fall off to get that ACL injury, having almost been 10 years in this league now. That's a tough time to sustain that at that point, right? Bruce Irvin had the same injury last year, who came out of his same draft, if I'm not mistaken, and Bruce is still not back with the team at this point.
Yeah, and I think he retired. I mean, he hasn't said it, but I think he basically said, if Seattle doesn't give me a call, I'm not going anywhere.
I think I've seen the same thing.
Yeah. And I think that's about all we can say for this game. I feel pretty good about it. I feel like this Titans defense has nothing for us, really. They got a couple of good players, but it doesn't manifest itself in any productive ways. And if this offense can pick up on some of the concepts that they were showing in the first game, I think we'll score plenty of points. And then it's just about the pass rush to make sure that A.J. Brown and Julio Jones can't decide the game by themselves.
Yeah, you can't if you're going to hit them deep. That means the 7-step drop. 7-step drops means the quarterback needs to have time to sit back there and throw, and that's where your pass rush should be able to hunt at that point. It's one thing it's hard to get on the 3 and 5 steps, but if they start to try to attack deep, that's when you need to take advantage.
Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, we're not going to get pressure every play, so this is a great test for our corners because the Colts receivers are pretty weak. That kind of stuff's going to be interesting to watch. But even if the Titans receivers have a good game, I say we get this win, go to 2-0. I'm not as high on Tennessee as I was before the season started.
Mm-hmm.
So only thing left is to see what they do. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up here, my man?
No, I agree with you. I think they're going to give you their best punch, but unfortunately, their best punch is coming from like a dislocated shoulder. You know, you can't the injury situation they've had, the loss of talent in recent years that have drained out there. It becomes substantial when you can't restock the cooler, and they just, in my opinion, and looking at the team, haven't quite restocked it. Still expect them to be competitive, not overlooking them, but I'm with you. I've adjusted where I see the Tennessee Titans this year. They still may end up winning that division, even if they're less than what we thought they were, just because of the nature of that division. But I feel good about this game. I think we got this one.
Yeah. And I didn't spend too much time talking about this, but them losing their offensive coordinator might have really messed them up more than people were thinking. We saw this when the Falcons lost Shanahan and went to, I think, Steve Sarkisian, and it was not the same. Could happen here too.
Yeah, and especially that offense, which was running a very specific style of what it was doing to its own identity, right? They weren't running like spread zone concepts you see here and there. They're running this under center stuff with the, with their brand of running the football. It's just it was very to go get another guy you carbon copy and say, oh, he'll be exactly the same in calling the plays. Not necessarily, not necessarily.
Yeah. Jesse Lund, thank you for becoming a channel member. Welcome to the channel, buddy.
Welcome, Jesse.
And yeah, I think that's going to go ahead and do it this week. Thank you to the Hawks Nest Brandon for coming out today.
I appreciate it.
And we'll be doing this again at some point, probably on his channel next time. We'd like to go back and forth. But yeah, that's the Titans game for you. We'll talk more about it as this week goes on. But yeah. Go Seahawks.
Go Hawks. Feels good. 1-0. Let's go.
Yeah, 1-0, baby.
Thanks for having me on, Seahawks, Brendon.
Okay, no problem. See everybody later today.
Have a good one.